boys and girls.
Bob, you're muted.
I hate it when I do that. Well, thank you, Melissa. Somebody needs to give me a dope slap every once in a while. Welcome to the Summer Solstice edition of the Tucson Macintosh User Group here in Tucson or wherever you happen to be. Our next meeting is not in July. Our next meeting will be August 15 at this same virtual location. There will be no meeting in July. We're taking July off. A couple of us are on our way to Macstock at the end of July, and we'll be like on the road when we're supposed to be doing this. Isn't that right, Roger? And he nods his head. In August, we will have an Ask Me Anything session hosted by Kevin. Thank you so much for doing that, Kevin. And hopefully, Chris will be back with a accessibility minute. We'll have the Macstock 7 wrap-up with Roger and myself. And we're going to do some tips and tricks in August as well. And we are asking for your input on those tips and tricks. If you found something, boy, this saves me a bunch of time, or I'm happy I found that, or whatever, would you please send me an email with the tip, and I'm going to include it in our meeting in August. Speaking of meetings, we want to thank Susan Clement for her meeting recaps that are found in the newsletter. Every month she does a recap for us. If I can remember to save, yep, I can still save the chat with whatever this new operating system is for Zoom. No meeting in July. Please see the chat window for a link to our online presenter review poll. And Bob has already put that in there. Thank you, Bob. The new virtual door prize during a Zoom meeting. Last month's winner was Chris Wesselman. Congratulations, Chris. The names of tonight's attendees will be collated into a numbered list and used to pick a winner. The monthly door prize has been increased to $30 per month, which basically means if you win the door prize, you get a free membership for the rest of the for a year. And please, somebody, probably Melissa, don't let me close the meeting without picking the door prize winner.
Melissa's is up in Flagstaff. She's only listening, so I'll try to remind you.
Please do that. Please do that. She's just a little bit further north than you are, but from my point of view, not that much.
Just about that much.
Yeah, about that much. Like the super raffle, to be eligible, your screen name must be displayed and must match the record that we have in our current TMUG membership database. Are there any other announcements or something I forgot?
Nope.
Then we move forward. Are there any for sales or wanted to buys? Kevin, you don't have something for sale this month?
No, I actually sold that laptop that my friend gave me to sell. Got that thing
Okay.
up and running, and somebody bought it for $2,700.
Great.
Oh,
So they got a good deal. My friend made money, and I made a little bit of money on it. So
Well, when everybody walks away from the deal happy, that's a good deal.
right.
All right.
Not
So,
computer related, but I've got a handful of Canon EF lenses for sale.
ooh, no, the wife would kill me. I don't need any more lenses.
You
Well,
can never have enough. Can never have enough.
I have a couple Canon EF lenses currently on, not PayPal, stupid,
eBay.
On eBay. And, if you send me a list of exactly what lenses they are, I can look them up and make you an offer. And the offer will be based on, gee, I want to make a little money on the other end of this as well. So, let me know. Very good. Okay, so we're going to move on to the tech update with Ridge. Ridge, are you standing by and ready to take over?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Then go right ahead, sir.
Okay. Sharing the screen. Okay, let's get this playing. It's not April. I guess that's the wrong one. I'm going to have to find it, so stand by. Okay, now I think I've got it. Here we go. Let's play, see what we can come up with. That's for June, yeah. And our software updates, we start with Adobe had updates and those applications that are listed there. I don't have any of those, but some of you may. And Affinity, Photo Designer, and Publisher that are the decent replacements for the Adobe stuff. They had an update to version 2.1, and for using Audio Hijack, it got updated. BB Edit, VisiCal, Carbon Copy Cloner, that's an important one. That got updated. And the Firefox for Mac and iOS, they had several updates, and Google Chrome for Mac and iOS has got several updates that you might want to be sure you have if you use those programs. Graphic Converter, our favorite old from Thorsten Lemke, is up now to 12.0.2. And iMazing, if you're using that, it's got updated. And Mac Tracker, if you want to know everything there is about all of Apple's Mac products, you can get that, and it's been updated. And Mozilla got Thunderbird updated as well. And Microsoft Office for Mac is now 16.74. And if you're using Parallels Desktop to run Windows on your Mac, it's got updated to 18.3. And if you're using the Photoshop third-party replacement, Pixelmator Pro has been updated. Quicken, if you're using that, been updated in Text Expander. And Zoom is now 5.14.10. And Apple also released stuff. They're professional products, Compressor and Motion, and then now they've got Final Cut Pro for the iPad and Logic Pro for the iPad. And Big Sur, Monterey, and Ventura all got updates. And if you're running a HomePod, it's got an update in iMovie as well. And if you're using iMovie on your iPhone or iPad, it's got updated. And here's more of their updates for iOS, and the iWork applications for Mac OS and iPad and iOS all got updated to version 3.1. And if you can't remember what the iWork apps are, they're listed there, Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. And if you're running a watch and you've got 9.5 and 9.5.1 updates, and TV, it's got operating system got upgraded to 16.5. And if you're running Safari on Monterey and Big Sur, it's got updated as well. And the Xcode for programmers, that's been updated. And coming, we're going to have an update another update to Ventura, and the first version of Sonoma is due out sometime. iOS got 2 updates. If you're running the 16 version of the iOS, those are coming. And iPad OS, you got 2 updates that are coming, and Vision OS, if you're going to get the big Vision Pro things you wear and look out of that Apple hasn't released yet, that version of its operating system will be coming sometime. We don't know when, but another 2 watch OSs are coming in the future, and also 2 TV OSs updates are coming. And finally, Xcode will come to version 15 sometime. Now, Apple is running a back to school sale, and it ends on October 2nd. And that sale is available to higher ed students, parents, teachers, faculty, and staff. You got to use the Apple Education Store, and you'll get an Apple gift card when you buy the following items. If you're running an iMac, if you buy an iMac, a MacBook Pro, or a MacBook Air, you'll get a $150 Apple gift card. And if you buy only a Mac Mini, you'll only get a $100 gift card. And if you buy a almost 13-inch iPad Pro, an 11-inch iPad Pro, or an iPad Air, you'll only get a $100 Apple gift card. And just for your information, that Education Store pricing is lower than the manufacturer's suggested retail price. For example, a new 15-inch MacBook Air will cost you $100 less, and an iPad Air will cost you $50 less than normal retail. And Google just said that they may delete your account or any accounts that have not been used or signed into for at least 2 years. But Apple says they may terminate your account if it's been active for 1 year. So if you want to keep those, it's probably a good idea to use them from time to time. And now Apple has just announced they have updates to its self-service repair program. And it's going to be available June 21st for the iPhone 14 lineup, the 13-inch MacBook Air with an M2 in it, and all of the MacBook Pros with M2 Pros and M2 Max chips in them. So that's a nice update for their self-repair program. But it winds up, you're going to have to rent the tools from Apple and buy the parts from them, and that'll take a while. So you got to program in enough time to do all that if you're going to do it by yourself. For Mac OS Ventura, Mac OS 13, there's multiple online reports that there are bugs in the 13.4 release that need fixing. Some folks have reported print menu selections that don't stick from time to time, and you need to reset them each time. And then others who are doing video playback, they're experiencing anomalies with high frame rate camera video content. And then they're reporting a screensaver issue that switches your main screen display to the wrong monitor when 2 screens are active. So when that screensaver, when the machine wakes up, it switches to the wrong screen sometimes. And one other report, well, with several reporting, typing the word rash in Safari will cause Safari to crash. And miscellaneous as far as Apple goes, the Apple Watches from Series 4 and later are going to be able to run watchOS 10 when it is released. And the recent parents of an autistic 10-year-old daughter in the United Kingdom allowed that daughter to play Roblox, whatever Roblox is, it's a game, I guess, on their family iPad as long as she liked without monitoring her. Later on, they found she had run up an App Store bill of more than $3,100. And several weeks later, after they contacted Apple, their bank, and the BBC, they were finally able to get a partial refund from their bank. And of course, the moral is you're going to let your kids use your iDevices, you probably would be a good idea to monitor them while they do it. And Tidbits reported that Drobo is now in liquidation focused Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and their website reads, as of January 27th, Drobo support and products are no longer available. So if you use a Drobo unit, they advise you to ensure you got a good backup and start looking for a suitable alternative. Then there was recently an Apple Watch that helped save the life of a woman from a potentially deadly blood clot by waking her up from a nap she was taking. It was not a very long nap when the watch woke her with an alarm that essentially said that your heart rate's been too high for too long. And apparently it was 10 minutes and it was at 178 beats per minute. So she had the most severe and deadly saddle pulmonary embolism, which only has a 50% survival rate. She's now in recovering from it. And these are the Macs that are going to run the Sonoma Mac OS 14 operating system. I'll just leave it here for a sec so you can see if any of these Macs that you have and you want to run Sonoma when it gets released. I have two Macs from Mac Minis from 2018, so it'll run. Those will run Sonoma. Okay. Next slide. For the rumors, there's online speculation whenever the iPhone 16 Pro is released, it's going to be the largest model since the Pro line debuted when the iPhone 11 Pro came out. And then there's another thought that the next iPhone to be released may be the iPhone 15. But is it going to be here sometime this fall if it is the iPhone 15? And then others are asking or thinking that Apple is working on a 14-inch iPad Pro with an M2 chip in it for later this year. And there are online reports that Apple is testing its upcoming M3 chip already. And its use in new Macs may be later this year or early next. And the thoughts are that it's going to be early next. And then they're thinking that the 15-inch MacBook Air that's just been released is going to come out with an M3 chip in it early next year. Now, Apple has upgraded its very first retail store at Tyson's Corner Mall near Washington, D.C. And that was originally upgraded and enlarged from its original spot. And clockwise from the upper left, that's what it looks from the outside. And there on the right, the people are waiting to get in. And then there's on the lower left is where the people first came in, and on the lower right is an example of where you can find out what covers for your what kind of watch bands you might want. They have upgraded their entire store. And of course, we still have cloth logos and pins if you want. And you can contact me or Kurt Blanchard if you want to buy one of them. So that's it for this part of the slideshow. And we'll go on next to items of security interest for the month. And the software that had security fixes in it, all of those of Adobe and Google had Chrome and for Mac and iOS. And whenever you see the word through, you've got other updates in there as well. And Mozilla went and had Firefox and Thunderbird updated with security fixes. And Microsoft had 5 fixes in their 16.4 update to Office. And Apple also had updates. Big Sur got 25 fixes and Monterey got 29 fixes. And Ventura got 51 fixes, and the Safari update for Big Sur and Monterey had 5 fixes in it. Then iOS and iPad, the 16.5 got 13.9 fixes, and the 15.7.6 update got 17 fixes, and tvOS got 28 fixes, and the watchOS had 32 fixes. And here's the time to remind us that Apple does try to keep the malware down to almost nothing. They have 2 programs to try and stop malware. The XProtect program is their malware scanning tool. It works invisibly in the background. It doesn't require you to do anything, and it checks against a list of malicious stuff when you open downloaded applications, and it's regularly updated by Apple in the background, so you're not even aware of when it is being updated. If you download and try to open files contaminated with malware, you might see an explicit warning that the files will damage your computer, along with a reference to the type of malware. In that case, you should delete the file immediately. And then there's Gatekeeper, that blocks downloaded software that has not been digitally signed by an Apple-approved developer. Gatekeeper provides an error message when you try to use or install unsigned software, which says such and such can't be opened because it is from an unidentified developer. Gatekeeper can protect you by only installing software downloaded from the Mac App Store, or you can set it to allow you to install software from the web, but from verified developers. Recently, Apple has set it to check for malware every time it runs, rather than just the first time you install. So you can adjust the Gatekeeper settings via the Security and Privacy General tab section of System Preferences. And that's it this month for my items of security interest, and thank you for your attention. And of course, the moral of the whole program is to stay safe. Adios.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Ridge. Appreciate all your work. We're going to move on to the accessibility minute with Chris. Chris, are you ready to take off?
I am ready.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Rich, for that internal malware info. I didn't know about that. That looks like that's worth taking a look at. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, which is up. And where is it? Okay, it's in notes. I think this is it. Okay. Now I'm seeing two of them on my screen because I split my screen. So tonight, as we're all aware, we've got the WWDC stuff, and I'm sure Tony has a ton of content for us. So I'm going to keep my part of this fairly short, and so we're not listening to Tony until 9:30. We got a really good suggestion from Susan, and that was to talk about text to speech. And just to clarify what that is, I want to just set the stage, and then we'll talk more about this in August. There's speech to text, and you can all see my screen here, right?
Right.
It says, okay, good. There is, speech to text, which is dictation. And then there's, we're talking about the opposite, where the text is read back to us for proofreading or any other reason. And unfortunately, Apple has never really promoted this as much as it could. And so I'll just make some rather big points here. One of the things that's really important with this, and is everybody with me, that you select some text and the computer reads it back to you, right? That's the whole idea. First of all, you've got to have a voice that is understandable. And I've got some suggestions for August. And one of them is for those of us that are using text to speech down here, if you have some preferred voices, please share them, and we'll make maybe a list of good voices, because Apple still includes a bunch of really dinky novelty voices, which are like, I'm trapped inside this computer. And, that kind of stuff is useless for if you're going to be reading back pages of text. So you've got to find some good voices. There are some good optimized voices, but as I'm looking at system preferences, they seem to have mixed them all up again. So I'm really hoping this gets cleaned up in Sonoma and in OS 17. Although I'll be honest, I did most of this on the Mac because that's where I think people are going to be doing it. But so a good voice is really step one. The easy part is selecting the text, obviously, but another challenge is starting and stopping the speech. You know, some apps may have a contextual menu that says speech. Can you guys see my contextual menu? I bet you can.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, you can, great. See, it says start and stop. Well, that's really good. But if it's not here, and in my humble opinion, this is exactly where it should be in every app, then you can go up into the edit menu and you will probably find speech up there. But it may not always be there. It may be in other places. Or an app like Microsoft Word may rely on something called turn text into audio, which is a system service. And that actually is sort of an interesting idea and does a higher quality job, but it takes longer. And we'll talk about that in August. But so that's the next step, is starting and stopping. And fortunately, it looks like most apps have a speech item in the edit menu, but it would be really nice if everybody had it in the right click or the contextual menu. And the other thing I can show us here is in terms of the voices, and I'll do a new share for this real quick, and then, oh, maybe it's voice singular. Okay, new share, and see if I can get to this really quickly. I hope. Here we go. Okay. And so notice if I type in voices, because I'm thinking all the different voices for this, nothing comes up. And the other sort of takeaway for tonight, notice I'm not even bothering to guess about where this is. I'm just going to put in voice and I'm going to look for the things. And here's voice accessibility, which is probably where most of us would have gone anyway, but we can just click there and it'll switch over to the various voices. They are here. Everybody's seeing this okay? And various voices, but there are, as you can see, it's a little bit mixed up and it's spread out under different flavors of English. I'm actually using a female South African voice right now called Tessa, and which is the one that's working best for me. And you can set your system language, presumably English, and you have a speaking rate, a speaking volume, and then various other settings down here. I would caution about speaking announcements only because that can be kind of an awful lot. You can also speak item under the cursor. We'll take a look at that next time. But let me see if I go back and new share, and this will be the last thing I'll probably do tonight. Let's see, let's just grab a paragraph here. And I go down and say, start speaking.
can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
No.
Yeah, there
Can
may be
you?
something else.
I missed the moose.
Yeah, well, anyway, well, I'll work on that for August. Maybe there's a way we can share the audio for that. But the problem is, even the South African voice choked on OSs. And so there sometimes is the thing you can do, like put in an apostrophe or something, and maybe that'll sound better. But at any rate, one hopes that in the long term, Apple will take it a little bit more seriously on speech to text, because it can be very useful, especially after dictation, to see what exactly and have it read back. So any questions on that before we sign off for tonight?
It's going to be especially helpful if you're old and you can't hear, like me.
Yeah, well, you'll notice I use headphones. even with my new hearing aids, I still use headphones. So that can be a big plus in terms of this kind of thing. But, and again, you know, the voice just has to work. Otherwise, it's not going to be worth it. And I know, Bob, you said you were using this, right, for proofreading?
Yes, yes, I do. When I write something, I can read it again and again and again and again and still miss that thing that I got wrong. But if someone reads it to me, I can hear it right away sometimes. So I use the same voice that you did. You used Chris Tessa, is that right?
Oh, really?
South
Interesting.
African female, because that's the one that seems the clearest to my ear. And give it a try. And the fact that I found the key combination to start and stop helps me a lot, because I've been using the reading of it for proofreading for a long time.
Oh, can you share the key combination, Bob?
It was, I think it's Option Escape.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll take a look at that. But we can also continue the conversation online on any of these points if people want to continue the conversation, and I'll turn it back to you, Bob, so we can keep it moving here.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it. You've become a key player in our presentations here on TMUG. And we're going to give you a raise. We're going to give you a 20% raise.
I say make
And,
it 30.
Okay, all right. You trucked me into it, Kevin. 30% raise. Next, we're going to turn over to our resident rocket scientist, Tony Ewing, who's going to give us a recap of WWDC. And he's already doing it. Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, first, real quick, Chris, when you share your screen, you can share the audio at the same time from your computer in Zoom. So you have to do that when you start sharing.
Oh, the little check boxes at the bottom?
Yep, one of the little check boxes at the bottom.
Never thought about that. I knew about that for sharing videos, but I didn't know about it for just audio. Thanks, Tony.
Yep. Okay, so first off, the presentation was over 2 hours. Normally it's a little over an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Apple went through 4 new operating systems. And this is more just to give you a preview, all the stuff that's coming. And then Apple announced a bunch of new hardware, including the Vision Pro, which is totally new system. Okay. So the Mac Pro was kind of expected. The Mac Studio, we kind of expected. The MacBook Air, you know, they're making updates and changes. But let me walk through now. So how much time did Apple actually spend on each of these items? So they kind of had an intro that was 3 minutes and an outro that was 3 minutes. They spent 15 minutes to introduce 3 new machines. They spent 15 minutes on iOS 17, and iOS 17 had a lot of features that are common with iPad OS and Mac OS, so they talked about them first in iOS 17. So iPad OS was 9 minutes, Mac OS 14 minutes. They didn't talk about specifically tvOS. They said they called it audio and home. And then they talked about watchOS for 15 minutes. And that included a lot of the health information. And that's also in most of the operating systems. And then they spent almost 45 minutes talking about the Vision Pro. So this is Apple's next big thing. They wanted to get developers really excited about this new hardware for the Vision Pro. Okay, so the new MacBook Air, it's essentially a larger version of the 13-inch MacBook Air, but now it's 15 inches. So it's got the Liquid Retina screen, which means it doesn't do the variable refresh rate like the MacBook Pros, but it has that very similar high def camera, 3 microphone array. They were able to fit a couple more speakers in, so it's got 6 speakers, more like the MacBook Pros. It now has a M2 processor, kind of expected, which they said, this is now 12 times faster than the fastest Intel-based MacBook Air. Has 18 hours of battery life. And one of the things that they did to comparison, and one of the things I like to see is how they're comparing. They compared it to 15-inch PC laptops, right? And they showed it's faster, it's got a better display, it has a longer battery life. Everything was about double what you get from a 15-inch laptop, except the thickness. This is only 11.5 millimeters thick. So this is a really thin laptop. That's the total thickness when it's closed. With the M2 processor, you can get 24 gigabytes of main memory, and you can get 2 terabytes of SSD. And this machine starts at $12.99. They also said that the 13-inch MacBook Air is still $11.99, and I think the Edge, and then the M1 13-inch was still $10.99 or $9.99. So they've got a good price range from $9.99 to $12.99 here in the consumer-oriented MacBook Air lineup. So essentially the color, that midnight color, is a dark blue. It's the third one on that screen from the left. Okay, the Mac Studio, right? The Mac Studio just came out about a little less than a year ago, if I recall correctly. And now they've updated it to the M2 Max. It's about 25% faster than the M1 version. And then the other feature that they added now is they have the M2 Ultra processor. And so this is similar to what they did with the M1 Ultra, where it was two copies of the M1 Max kind of stitched together in one package. The M2 Ultra is 2 M2 Maxes stitched together. And they kind of talked about the speed improvements, 20% faster on the processor, the main processor, 30% faster in graphics, and 40% faster in the neural engine. And this new part now supports the higher speed HDMI. So you can drive an 8K HDMI screen at 240 hertz. If you can find such a monitor that you can afford, you can drive it now with the M2 Ultra Mac Studio. With the M2 Ultra, you can get up to 192 gigabytes of memory. And one of the things here is that memory is all accessible to the GPU or the CPU. So this allows them to do very large neural network. The large language models will now fit in memory and can run directly in memory on this M2 Ultra based Mac Studio machine. And with that, you can get an 8 terabyte SSD. So the starting prices, it's $2,000 for the M2 Max and $4,000 for the M2 Ultra version of the Mac Studio. And they were showing there you can drive 6 of the Liquid Retina XDR Apple displays with this machine. Those are what, $6,000 each. So that's $40,000 worth of monitors there. Although those have stands, so that's even more. Okay, so now the Mac Pro. So it uses the M2 Ultra. Again, 192 gig of memory, 8 terabyte SSD. It has, oops, a little typo there, 6 PCIe Generation 4 slots. That allows you to add more processing capability and more power to this, and expandable storage, expandable networking. This is really designed for people who are doing large amounts of audio processing or video processing that need to ingest a lot of data and then spit it back out, and do a lot of processing on it when they do. I'm not sure, the M2 Ultra Mac Studio is price efficient for pretty much everything that I can think of, except some really high-end rendering farms or high-end video where they're doing like 40 or 50 different video streams live at one time. This new machine comes in either a tower version or it will fit rack mounted. So you can, for data centers, it has that rack style version. And this starts at $7,000. I did not try. I'm sure someone did. You can probably ramp it up and get it up to 40,000 if you add a whole bunch of PCI cards to this system. Okay. iOS 17. They talked a lot about they're doing improvements in different areas. So the first area was communication. And so they created this concept of a personalized contact poster. Now, this is a poster that you create, and you can see it can use real pictures. It can use emojis. The one on the right shows it with vertical text. If you speak a language with vertical text, you can use those. But you can pick the font, you can pick the size, you can pick the background color or the background. And when you call people, if you share your contact info with them, this will come up. And so it will go, it's part of your contact information when you share it with someone is your contact poster. And so it'll be a full screen representation of you on when you call them. They've now added a feature for live voicemail. So you send something to voicemail because you don't recognize the number or you don't need to talk to someone. It will show you a transcription of the incoming message. So as the person speaks, it will transcribe it and show it on the screen. And you can then choose to pick it back up or leave it as just a voicemail message for you in the future. You can now, when calling with FaceTime, instead of getting they're not answering, you can now leave a message from FaceTime. So it's going to make that a little bit easier. If you're trying to communicate with someone, you can just leave them a quick message about what you were trying to let them know or why you want to talk to them. The search filter, you can now add terms to search so that you can search on multiple items, and this allows you to reduce the number of hits that you have. So you could search for, say, a certain person, but there was something they said about their new iPad. So you could put their name in and then iPad, and then it would only show things that had both pieces of information in the search. They have a new catch-up feature. So if you're in a group message and hundreds of messages have gone by, it will take you to the last message you read, and you can hit a button to say catch up, and it'll just take you to the latest messages, and it'll show that you have read those messages. When you're replying, you can now swipe on a message to reply to that specific message instead of putting it into a general thread. And similar to the live voicemail, if someone leaves you an audio message, it will be transcribed and show up for you if you don't have time or you don't have an audio source to listen to the message. A new safety feature they added is check-in. So this is, hey, someone is leaving your house and going home. This check-in will let you know when they've arrived at their destination safely. The person has to do this, has to share their location with you. It's essentially just a temporary location share, but it has some extra information from a safety perspective, like, are they still in cell phone range? Is their cell phone battery? How much battery do they have left? And if they get delayed on the way, it'll show you where they got delayed. And there's things for the person who's using the check-in that they can say, oh, I got delayed, I need another 15 minutes. And you know that that's intentional, that they're taking a long time. They also now added live stickers. So anywhere that you can use emoji right now, any place you can get to that emoji keyboard, you can add a sticker, and you can create stickers from lots of different things. Kind of a cool thing, because you can do it from pictures. You can make animated stickers. I'm sure a lot of people will love doing that. Okay, so now improvements in sharing and AirDrop. You notice how there's been a lot of stuff in the news about AirDrop getting random things coming in. They're now making it so if your phone is actually close to another phone, it'll use I believe it's using the NFC to determine that the two phones are close to each other. And then you can use that to start sharing. You can share your contact poster directly. So instead of calling someone and saying, yep, I have your info, you can just say, share my contact info. It asks you which phone number you want to share. And then you just bring the two phones together and it'll share them back and forth. By also doing that, you can start a shared experience or photo share. And if you're sharing photos, it will actually do background photo transfer and let you know when it's done. So you don't have to wait. If they're sending a bunch of images to you, you don't have to wait for it to finish. You can just start it and then it'll happen in the background. One of my favorite things now on intelligent input, if it auto corrects a word for you, you can now, similar to what you can do on the Mac, you can now tap on the word on the phone and it'll revert it back to what you actually typed instead of having to retype it. And for dictation, they have updated the neural engine that runs underneath and the transformation model that they're using so that it is supposed to be much better at dictation. And we'll see how that looks when it comes out. Journal. So they're essentially creating a new app that lets you do personalized suggestions based on data that's on the phone about journal entries, like pictures you took earlier in the day, places you were, but it's all information that's internal to your phone, and the decision is all made based on data on the phone. It's not sending any data to Apple to make this decision. Everyone who has an Apple Watch is aware of the nightstand mode. They're calling it standby, but it's essentially the same as nightstand mode, similar to the watch. And that's the picture here on the right. And so it'll show, you can set it up to show a large clock. You can set it to show up widgets. Has a lot of different features. It's kind of like a low access use, but think of it as like a kind of keeping track of what's going on. If you're watching a game with a live score, it'll show that in the standby mode as well. So extra features. They kind of glossed over these at the end. They didn't show them. You no longer have to say hey before the S lady's name. You can just say her name and then she will respond. They're adding, similar to what Google has had for, I don't know, 10 years, an offline mode for maps. So you can download an area and tell it you want it to keep that area on the phone, and then it will use the offline version of the maps. It's very useful if you're traveling to a new place and you're not sure that you'll have good cell connection, or you're traveling in the mountains or something. It's very good to have the offline map mode. They also said that they're going to be able to recognize pets in photo albums now. So it'll recognize your specific pet and create, similar to faces for people, it'll have faces for animals and it'll recognize different animals. Okay. Switching to the iPad, they talked about widgets. So widgets are now going to be able to be placed on the home screen, similar to what's in the iPhone now, where you can put them on the home screen. And they can also be placed on the lock. The lock screen will be able to be customized like the iPhone, live activities. And it's amazing to me that, you know, you can now, after, I don't know, 10, 12 years, you can actually have multiple timers running at the same time without using the S lady to create and name a timer. They are now ported the health app to the iPad. And so they showed a lot of bigger display type items and more data that you can show by looking at things on the iPad instead of on your smaller iPhone screen. PDFs, they've done a lot of things now. It's auto detecting fields for scanned images. And it's then trying to identify the type of field it is and making suggestions for autofill. You can also, with PDFs, do live collaboration for markup and note-taking on the iPad with another person. So you can share a PDF with multiple people and they can both be editing and filling things in at the same time. So extras, they talked about improvements to Stage Manager. You can put the camera for use on an external display. So if you have if you have one of the Apple displays that has the camera in it, or an LG display, you can now use that with the iPad as your display. New tools for freeform, and you can use follow along. So if you have a large document, it will keep the place in freeform up with what the person who is the primary editor, the person who's moving it around. Your screen moves to match what they're seeing on their display. Okay. You take a sip here. Lots of new things. So at the beginning of the macOS Sonoma presentation, they essentially said all those features we showed you on iOS and iPadOS are as appropriate going to be in macOS as well. So almost everything that you saw that I just talked about will also be in Sonoma. So they have now added new screensavers, similar to what Apple TV does. You can also use memories that you have can be converted into the screensavers. These are high resolution screensavers, those slow moving over areas like cities and things, which are what the Apple TV does for screensavers. You can do the widgets on the desktop. They fade into background when you're using an app, and iPhone widgets you can have a widget for an app that's on your iPhone, and you can actually drag it onto your Mac desktop and interact with it on your Mac desktop. And it's just coordinating it as long as your iPhone is within Wi-Fi range of your computer. So probably more important for me, game mode. It will prioritize the game. It samples inputs at twice the rate, and they've figured out how to lower the latency for Bluetooth audio. So they're doing some things to pre-send the audio. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but they're definitely doing things to improve the latency. I don't know if you've used Bluetooth headphones with live things where you're making motions. It definitely induces a lag. They introduced a new thing for developers called the Game Porting Toolkit, and they were showing running new PC games by using this Game Porting Toolkit. They were able to directly show how to convert it directly into a Mac app and make calls directly to the Mac. And there's a set of tools called Direct3D or DirectX that Microsoft uses for video, and they have ported that directly to the Mac. So a lot of even the current newest titles are able to be converted in a simpler process for developers. So video conferencing. So they added a couple things, and a lot of these are recognition things. So they're recognizing where you are. This top one is showing a reaction. It's showing someone having said, that was a great thing, and they put confetti. And you can see that confetti looks like it has 3D extents, or some that's in front of the person, some behind the person, some in front of the background. This bottom corner kind of shows what they call a presenter overlay. So they're identifying your video, the person, they're identifying the background, and then your screen. And they're kind of mixing that together to show your video in front of your screen. So instead of having a separate screen off to the side, you can appear as a full screen person, or you can appear as a circle of video on top of the screen. So that makes it a lot easier to do screen sharing. And they said that video conferencing will work with Zoom and other tools like WebEx and other tools. So it's an OS level support that will work with any of the screen sharing software. Making improvements in Safari. They're doing private browsing. You can share passwords and passkeys with your family. They're adding a profile concept, so you can have two windows, one window logged in as work you and one window logged in as personal you, or one window logged in as yourself and one window logged in as a different person. And then it keeps the cookies, their favorites, all of the information separated between those two profiles. So if you need to test something, you can test it as a person who's not logged in while you don't have to log out of everything to do that. They're also allowing people to create web apps. So if you have a web app that you really like, something that you use, you can add it to the dock, and then it'll use the icon from the fave icon, and then it simplifies the experience. So then it only goes to that web page and that web app. It makes it a little easier to use some of the online websites. Okay. They jumped to audio and home next. So they have adaptive audio, which is combining the two modes that currently exist in the AirPods, transparency mode and noise cancellation. So it tries to identify when it's a background noise that you don't want to hear and when you're trying to understand what it is for a safety reason or because you're talking to a person. They're identifying what they call personalized volume. It tries to set the volume of new things based on what you have listened to in the past. It kind of keeps track of, oh, you always listen to this podcast a little bit louder, so it turns it up. If you listen to specific types of music and you turn the volume down, then it'll try to turn the volume down on that type of music. It does conversation awareness. So if you start talking to someone or someone starts talking to you and it recognizes a conversation, it will reduce the volume on your other audio sources and it will focus on the voices in front of you for the transparency and noise cancellation. So it'll cancel out things around you, but focus on voices that are in front of you coming towards you. So AirPlay, it's going to remember your audio preferences. It's trying to do a smart speaker suggestion. So if you always play a specific type of music on the kitchen speaker, it'll recommend, it'll default to, hey, that type of music's being played, I'm going to put it on the kitchen. You can obviously change it, but it helps with, you know, it's time-based and type of music based, where it looks like it's trying to identify where you would play that type of music. They said that in hotels, you're going to be able and they said select hotels, which likely means high end. To start with, they're going to have a QR code on the screen, and you'll be able to scan the QR code and then automatically connect to the AirPlay to that screen. So if the hotel has a 65-inch screen, you can send your Apple TV information directly to that screen. All you have to do is scan the QR code with the phone or an iPad, and you don't have to do any cables or figure out, okay, which AirPlay device is it? It has a QR code that you just scan. They were trying to improve sharing quite a bit. So they're doing SharePlay in the car. So the person who owns the car can set it up so that any passenger can join the session. So if you're in the car riding along with it, it'll recommend the session for you. And then you can push music as well as other people in the car. tvOS, Apple TV, they redesigned the control center. You'll be able to use your iPhone to locate that pesky Siri remote that seems to always get lost. You can add memories from your phone, from the iPhotos, photos, memories, and you can make those the screensaver, so it's your pictures as the screensaver. And they've added FaceTime for Apple TV. So it will use the iPhone or iPad camera. And this is showing a picture of that at the bottom there. That's an iPhone hooked up, and then it's showing this is a large TV hooked up to an Apple TV. It's showing their picture in the corner, and then multiple people on the screen. So it lets you do FaceTime to a large screen instead of a small screen, directly to a TV. And then you can also do SharePlay within FaceTime sessions. So they're trying to make that even better. Okay. So switching over to watchOS. So they said 4 things: connected, active, healthy, and safe. And so they're trying to say these are the things that they were working on. So they're now on that right-hand top one, you can see you can turn the crown to reveal a smart stack. So the displays are going to become more minimal, and you'll use the crown to get to information and look at what you want to look at that doesn't have to be on the display all the time. They added a new watch face, 2 new watch faces. This lower right one is called palette, and it's essentially color. And as the second hand moves and the minute hands move, it changes how the display looks. They have now apparently got the rights to use Snoopy and Woodstock. And so Snoopy and Woodstock will be on there, and they showed that they're interactive. So if it starts raining, the display will show it start raining, and Snoopy will, raise his ear up and protect Woodstock from the rain. So they showed, a lot of cute things. So, but the palette face and Snoopy and Woodstock. Let's see. So cycling, they talked a couple minutes about cycling. You can now connect to Bluetooth cycling power meters. This is more for people who are pretty serious about their cycling. And cycling workouts will now automatically show on your phone if you bring it with you. So if you have your phone hooked up to your bicycle, it will show you full screen so you can see more information about your workout on the iPhone. It's more information than really easily fits on a watch display. Hiking. They added new waypoints. The last place that you had a cellular connection to your provider, and an SOS waypoint, which is the last location where you were able to send an SOS message using any provider. They'll have an elevation 3D view, and you can see on the right-hand side there, they have a topographic map now. And so that'll show you points of interest and other information around you, along with the waypoints that you have for your hike. With the new devices, the new watch, they were showing information on doing the tennis and golf swings. Like it measures enough information to know how fast you're moving your wrist during the tennis swing and what your golf swing actually looks like. So with these new crash sensors in the newer devices, they're able to do a lot more helping you with your activities. So they talked a little bit too. Now they're going to add more mental health capabilities to mindfulness. They're going to it'll track feelings. And so you can add information, and then it'll ask you, why do you feel that way? And it will keep track of that. It's more information for people. And they're also going to add standardized assessments. And it looked like these weren't necessarily all done in watchOS, but they could be done on like the phone or on an iPad for depression and anxiety. And there's a kind of a battery of standardized assessment. And depending on how you answer, it will let you know if you should contact someone for help or if you're doing okay. So it kind of helps, when should you try to get help, is what they're trying to get to. And they hit on, right, this is all done in the iPhone. Apple doesn't have access to any of this information. You can choose to share these assessments with a provider that you establish a relationship with, but the intent is these are private to you, but they're the official professional tools to help people. The second thing they talked about was vision health. I don't know how many times you've had to tell children, hey, move that phone away from your face. It shouldn't be 2 inches away. So now the iPad and the iPhone will do 2 things. They will track the amount of time that you're in daylight. It's recommended you're in daylight 80 to 120 minutes per day. And it will also track the screen distance using the True Depth camera. And if you're too close, it will show a thing that says, device too close. It'll say iPad or iPhone too close, move device away. And then when you move it away, it'll say, yep, your iPad's at a good distance, your screen's at a good distance, continue using it. So if someone's, right here using the device, it'll recommend you move it away. And they're saying that to help with vision. Okay. Now, a little over an hour into the presentation, Tim Cook stood up there and said, well, we just have one more thing, which is another 45 minutes of their presentation. I will not take that long. So this is now essentially an alternate reality platform. I don't know how many of you have heard, there was a thing called Google Glass that was a while ago, 5-10 years ago. I don't know how long. Kevin may know how long ago that was. But this is now Apple's vision for this. So, right, Apple did personal computing with the Mac, the screen, and the mouse interface. They transformed to mobile computing with the iPhone and touch interface. And now they're calling it spatial computing with the Apple Vision Pro. So it's controlled with eye tracking, hand gestures, and voice. And this just kind of gives you an idea that, the picture in the upper right is kind of looking at the front of the device. The lower left is a full picture, and that is an external battery that allows you to use an extra amount of time. And then kind of showing you what it looks like. Apparently that person, right, that's a live picture. That dog in the corner is kind of looking at the person and moving around. So you see the background live. So it's a look through. They said this is the first device that you look through and not at. So you can use 2D apps. So a plane like an iPad or iPhone or computer screen, you can move those in the view. You can put them where you want them to be. You can put something off to the side, in front of you, at an angle, lower down, so that you can reference information while you're still looking at things in front of you. You can also do things with 3D volumes. This one on the lower right, that picture is showing how, even though it's showing a movie in front of the person, but they said, well, I don't want to feel like I'm sitting in my house. I want to feel like I'm sitting on the moon. So they changed what the room looks like to a moonscape, right? They're watching some sci-fi movie. So it does eye tracking, and you can see that photos icon looks like it's standing out from the rest of the screen. It's kind of popped forward. That's showing you what your eye is looking at. It's showing you where it thinks you're looking. So when there's actually a display on the front, so that's not actually the person's eyes, that's a video screen that's showing their eyes. So the top picture is they're looking at an app, and you can kind of see it has a little bit of a gloss in front of their eyes. And the bottom picture is if they are fully immersed in a 3D experience, and you can see that they're not able to pay attention to you. If people walk into the space, it will show them on the screen, and then you can either go back into the full 3D immersion, or you can switch over. If you start looking at the person, it'll then show your eyes and it'll pull you out of the 3D experience. Okay, so 2D and 3D workspaces. So this was an example, someone standing at a desk in the upper right. And you can kind of see they have a web browser page, a messages page, and they received this file and they were able to pop it out onto their desktop, and they're able to rotate that thing around, whatever that, it looks like a building of some sort. And so that's kind of what it looks like. And the stuff in the background is the background. And they were actually at a table. So it looked like one of the Apple big tables. So it works that you can have a virtual keyboard in front of you. You can type on this virtual keyboard. They didn't really demo that. They kind of showed the keyboard in front of people, but they didn't demo them using it as far as I recall. But it also works with the Bluetooth for the Magic Keyboard and Magic Trackpad. So if you're using that, you can actually type on a keyboard, and because of the display is showing you where you're at, it's like you're typing on a real keyboard. And you are typing, but you can still see it. You can also project a Mac display into this workspace. You can see here he took a panorama picture and it's wrapped around him, so it's like you're standing in that location. It will also capture 3D video and spatial audio with this device. So there's a button you can press, and it does put a light on, letting people know it shows people that you're collecting the data, but you can capture the video and audio with this device and then watch it on this device. They have the spatial cinema and 3D. I kind of showed a little picture of that before. They said at the beginning, the first day, there will be 100 arcade titles that'll be usable with like Xbox or PlayStation controllers, and Disney Plus will be available from day one. So hardware design, kind of showed this. There was a single piece of glass in the front. There's a lightweight frame. You can see this button on the left, and there's a digital crown on the right. So the thing from the watch, it looks like a little bigger than the watch one, but it's a digital crown, and there's a power button on the left. They're going to individually fit these. So the light shield, they're going to have a bunch of different variants. That's the piece with kind of the foam on it. And then the back, which I'll show in a later picture, is a single knit piece of fabric. It's the 3D knit for comfort and cooling. If you wear glasses, there's a magnetic way to attach Zeiss custom lenses into this so that you don't have to wear your glasses with it. It will have them in there, and they're magnetically attached. So if you're sharing the device with someone else, you can pull the magnets off, the magnetic lenses off, and someone else can use the device. So it has a 2-hour life and then 2 hours on external battery. And if you're willing to be tethered, it can be all day use with if it's plugged in. So the displays, the pixel size on these OLEDs is about the same size as the pixels on cameras. So the density is so high that you really shouldn't see the pixels at all. It's a 4K display. It's a little bit bigger than a 4K display for each eye. It does detect the room, and it matches the audio bounces to the room and readjusts the audio so that it sounds like you're in the space you're supposed to be in and not in the room that you're in. So it has 8 cameras on the front, and you can kind of see there's a couple downward facing cameras. There are side cameras. There's these front cameras. There's a lot of devices. So it's a combination of 2 Apple custom silicon chips. So the M2 processor, and they have this new one called an R1. And so it handles the input from 12 different cameras, 5 different sensors, and 6 microphones. There's a 12 millisecond latency from the sensor till you see it on the display. And they said that's faster than the blink of an eye. So a lot of times, like I use an Oculus Quest, and you get a little disoriented and you get a little motion sick if the display doesn't match how you're moving your head, and it's not fast enough, it causes motion sickness, and a lot of people have problems with that. Apple is really working to make this to the level where it will not cause motion sickness unless someone is really, really sensitive. And that external display that I showed you had the eyes on it, that's a curved OLED display. Okay. So for FaceTime, it would look kind of funny if you had this device on your face. So what they do is this picture on the right is showing using the true depth camera to take your image, and then that enrolls your face, and then it uses a neurally trained representation based on that enrollment to do your video for FaceTime, right? And it has eye tracking, so your eyes track, and it's tracking your facial expressions, and it's also tracking your hands. This new OS is called Vision OS. And, you've heard of Touch ID, you've heard of Face ID. This is now Optic ID. So it's actually using the iris to unlock a scan of your iris to unlock the device. And they specifically mentioned that even identical twins have enough differences in their iris that it's likely they would not be able to share the device without allowing it, right? It wouldn't automatically, like thumbprint and fingerprint and Face ID, a lot of times for identical twins, they can fool it. Iris unlock, it's highly unlikely you'd be able to fool that way. In terms of privacy, they were very specific that the device itself handles the eye tracking, and you have to make a hand gesture to click on the screen. So it's kind of like you just touch your 2 fingers together for a click. And if you touch the fingers together and drag, that's the drag maneuver. So they're trying to make it so that it's very easy to use, and very natural types of things for this user interface to this. So the one on the right here is kind of showing Core OS is all of the stuff that iPad, iPhone, Mac OS, all that stuff is in the core. They added this real time. That's how they get their latency down. A different rendering pipeline, which uses the M2 graphics processing units. And you can see they did a lot of things with the neural representation. So they're using a lot of that in the M2. And then a lot of this is enabled by their new chip, that real-time subsystem, and then the M2 being able to do as much of this processing as it can. And what they said is it'll be available early next year and starting at $3,500, which, that to me seems like a steep price, but this is also first generation hardware. But if you account for the type of display and the amount of processing power that this thing has and the things that you can do with it, it can probably replace a pretty hefty desktop computer in terms of use. And that, that feels in that price range feels about right for, dual 4K displays plus a M2 processor computer. I put some links on here. So if you go to this first one, the Apple event, that will show you, and it has previews and information for all of the items that I showed are linked to on that page. You can go to the newsroom specifically for the Vision Pro, and then I put the developer link in. I don't want to try to do this over Zoom, but they do have a 1 minute ad. I think it's 1 minute and 30 seconds. So if you want to watch this ad, it shows a person kind of using this, but I would say this is kind of the sales ad. All the images in here were from the keynote or from the Apple website. And thank you, Bob, for sending me that link to all the images from Apple for doing this.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks,
You
Tony.
can take a break now. I'm sure that we're going to be talking about all of this stuff in more detail in the future, especially the OSs and so forth. I have one little, I want to lean on a couple of announcements again. One is that in August, we hope to do a tips and tricks presentation, and we would like you to submit your favorite little trick or tip for that presentation. And just send me an email, bob@thinkbob.com. Also, Bob Doms has placed the link to the presenters. We have a new message. That's probably Bob Doms. There it is. The feedback form for June may be found at that link. Please click on it now and then fill it out at your leisure. And I have one more question, and that is, Ridge, have you ordered your new M2 Ultra Studios yet? And if so, let me know when you're going to throw away the M1 Studio. Okay.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
Has anybody had any issues with 1Password lately, with not accepting their passwords when they're first start to use it?
Yeah, there was an article, I think, in the Naples Mac user group, IO thing, the Google thing. This morning, somebody had a problem with transferring from one computer to another with
one password and
No.
I didn't quite understand what was going on, but there might be some.
This is
information
actually
we
what
can
I'm
get.
talking about. There was a bug that was introduced with the last release 2 weeks ago. And I was talking to the developer and he explained their new protocols and how to fix it. So, but if nobody's having the
Not
problem,
the
there's
same thing,
no need to go
okay.
over it.
Yeah, Kevin, could you
I'm
send that to
finding
me?
one password works a lot better the last couple of weeks, frankly.
Tony, basically you have to have it in the menu bar at all times now. If you don't
Okay.
have it in your menu bar, it's gonna crash. Even though it's an option to turn it off.
Okay.
Okay,
Bob, do we have a winner?
yes, we will have a winner. I have not asked Hey S Lady to pick a winner yet, but I will. Let's see. Pick a number between 1 and 24.
That would be 23.
Well, Doriana Peterson, you are the winner of the monthly door prize for $30. Basically, it will pay your membership for the next year. And I will send that off to you tomorrow. And congratulations. And happy summer solstice to everybody. And Susan, I did remember to save the chat. It's on its way to you now. And there we go. Hold that. Have a good evening. Drive safely. Come back and see us in August. Again, there's no meeting in July. And have a good summer. We'll see you in August.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Adios.
90.
Bye.